get that dream job. Welcome, Sophia. And, I think we got some more people out here. Let's see who we have. We have Sophia and Rhonda and Pam. Oh, wow. Look, we're getting a great group of people on tonight's webinar. So let's go ahead and get started because I do want to respect everyone's time. So officially, welcome to You're Hired. I'm Coach Tam, and I am here with my good friend who just so happens to be a master interview coach, Erica Spradley. Now, Erica is also the founder of Confident Career Woman, and I'm sure that will come up in our conversation today. But she has agreed to be here to help you level up your career. So it is our prayer that our time tonight is a blessing to you. And we'll talk a little bit about why we feel like this is important now, but know that this is a place, a safe place where you can express your questions, use the chat feature. We want to get to as many questions as we possibly can tonight. And for those of you that are attending, we will also be getting the replay to you along with some additional tools and resources to help you with your goals. So with that, Erica, thank you so much for being here today. I appreciate you.
I appreciate you. Thank you for having me.
Well, I want to get started by giving the audience a little bit of background on you, because some people have had the pleasure of working with you, so I've learned, and others are just meeting you for the first time. And I will say transparently that although I have known you for years, I can't say that I have met another interview coach before. So I'd love for you to share with the audience, like, what inspired you to get into this field?
So it's funny you ask, because what inspired me to get into the field, I kind of stumbled into it. You know, it's funny, people look at your background and now they're like, oh, wow, you know, this person has accomplished this and they've done this. But I am literally the planner who didn't have a plan. And I also have that on my website. So the backstory is when I was in high school, I interviewed successfully, and I recognized early on that if you don't interview well, how are you going to have your basic needs met? How are you going to get some of your needs as well as your wants? And I just had this natural gift to interview well. That's not to say I didn't prepare, but the one thing that I could do well is interview. So as I moved throughout my career, and my backstory too is that I woke up and didn't know what I wanted to be or do when I grew up in my 30s, and thought, what am I going to do now? And I literally gave my employer a 6-week notice, put my resume on monster.com, went on vacation, took all the money out of my 401k, and a recruiter contacted me. It was my ability to communicate my value, my experience on paper, on the resume, interview well, that allowed me to envision into industries where I had no formal experience or education. So as it relates to me starting a business, there was this phrase, find what it is you love and make money doing it. And I was like, what am I good at? What is it that I love? And it was interviewing.
Wow. Well, I'm sure that our audience is thankful. Although I'm sure no one wants you to have to go through that experience of kind of starting over and discovering and figuring out what you want to do. The audience today is going to benefit from your journey and your experience. Now, why is it important for you? You know, when I heard about what you're looking to do, and I want you to share a little bit with our viewers, the goal that you have set for yourself, but I'd love for you to share, why was it important for you to do something now to help people level up?
Well, and let me just be honest too, doing conversations around resumes and working with resumes is one of my least favorite things to do. While I'm capable of doing it, it's not something that I love. So in most instances, I avoid it. But we have never experienced anything like we're going through now with COVID-19. And prayerfully, we won't go through anything like this again. But you're talking about in a matter of 3 weeks, 16 million unemployment claims filed. So in listening to Pastor Furtick preach one day, talk about what is the miracle that God can do through you. And I'm like, you know what? There's a group coaching program that I had years ago. And the information is still relevant because I teach principles a lot of times when it relates to stuff like this, and the principles work when you work them. So I set a goal for myself to help 1,000 people. I'm actually looking to exceed it because that's what I like to do, exceed my goal. But launch a career catalyst program that starts Sunday that's designed to give people strategies around cover letters, resumes, interviewing, so that even if they don't land their ideal job, they can at least find something in the interim that will prayerfully sustain them.
Awesome. Awesome. So you heard it here first, ladies and gentlemen. She's opening up this opportunity to 1,000 people, right? So definitely appreciate your willingness to give back and to be a part of our discussion tonight. Again, ladies and gentlemen, if you have questions as we go through it, of course, I have a few questions that I want to share just based on my research, some of the things that I see that are asked over and over and over again online. I want us to get into those, but if you have questions that are on your heart that you came here wanting to get answers to, this is your place to do that. So use the chat feature there in Zoom and send us your questions, and we'll try to get to as many of them as we can. So Erica, I know resumes are not your favorite subject, but a lot of things start there. So let's talk a little bit about resumes. Now, I think things may have changed since I was really into updating my resume. I saw there was functional resumes, there's chronological resumes, there's combined resumes. Help us make sense of the different types of resumes, and then how does the audience know when to use which type?
Okay. It's a good question. So using myself as a personal example, I was in retail for many years. While I stayed in that field, I used a chronological resume. So that is the resume that starts, of course, they all start with your most recent work history, and you work your way backwards. Usually about 10 years is as far as you'll need to go. But that particular style and type of resume is used if you're in the same industry looking for the same type of job. If you are looking to transition into something different, then you want to use a functional resume because that focuses on your transferable skills. So when I was looking for something different, when I was transitioning out of retail, even though I didn't know what, I knew that leadership would transcend any industry. So I built a resume focused on my ability to lead, sell, great customer service skills, coach people, and produce results. So that opened up industries for me and expanded my career options in ways that I would not have before. And then, of course, there's the combination resume or the hybrid resume that's a mix between the two.
Got it. So if a person is looking for something kind of in the same field, they can probably use that traditional chronological format. But if you're looking to switch, maybe do a career switch, then a functional resume is going to be best for you because it allows you to kind of talk about some other skill sets that you may have that may not necessarily align to the different jobs that you've had.
Absolutely. So for me as a retail store manager, I was the person who did the hiring, the training, the terminating. I did the merchandising. So it was like HR, sales, operations, leadership, loss prevention. But if all of those things are not relevant for the role that I'm applying for, then why would I need to place them on my resume? So one of the mistakes that people make is they include information that isn't relevant for the role that they're applying for. You should have multiple versions of your resume because you could have the exact same title, two different employers. Those postings are written by two different people. So if you're using the same resume to apply both, you may appear to be unqualified for one of them because you haven't aligned yourself with what the employer is seeking.
So that's big, family. I think what I heard Erica say is that it's really, really important that you take a look at the job that you're applying for and ensure that the resume that you're presenting aligns with that job description, right? So not just a generic resume that we use the same one every time. We actually need to take a step back and say, okay, this is what I'm applying for. How can I make sure that the resume that I'm submitting puts my best foot forward for that specific position?
Yes, that is correct.
Yeah. So then let's talk about this. You know, I remember back in the day when I was trying to put together resumes and probably using the wrong type based on your description. But one of the challenges that I ran into is how am I going to get all of this information on one page? Because it used to be you have got to get everything on one page. Then I heard, well, it's kind of okay if you spill over to 2 pages. What is the current philosophy on the length of a resume? Does it matter? And if so, what should our strategy be there?
It does matter. And the strategy should be, what is the relevant information that you should include? Which means you can go to 2 pages as long as you have utilized those 2 pages and it's not 2 pages of fluff. If you're just saying, okay, I have all of this information in my resume and now it's 2 pages, recruiters do not have the capacity to read every single resume. So the fact that yours is too long could get you disqualified and thrown into a pile because they're not compelled to continue reading. So you want to make sure that it is the quality of the information that you're putting into it. And if you need to go to 2 pages, that is acceptable, but 1 is preferred.
Got it. So only go to 2 pages if you really have something important to share that could not be fit into that first page. No fluff. Don't just, add stuff just to be adding it. Clear and concise is better because you know what, you bring up something that's really important. I can remember times when I hired in corporate, and now as an entrepreneur, when I hire, we're busy. So we really don't read every single detail on the resume. And if you make it hard to get through it, we might decide, just as you said, I'm going to move on.
Done. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk about this though, because things have really advanced technologically. It used to be back in the day. I remember when I first got out of college and I was applying for jobs, like I could literally go to a place and give them my application on my resume. It's a totally different world now. You got to go to this website. You need to go to the careers section. You need to upload your resume. And then it's my understanding, hey, there are actually software programs that analyze the resume to determine if it even makes the cut. So there's almost like there's this gatekeeper process now in order to even be considered for a job. So how can we help those that are here with us today position their resume so that it makes it through that process and actually gets into the hands of a person who will give them an opportunity?
Good question. So let me say that when my Career Catalyst program starts on Sunday, that's one of the things that we will go through. That program is actually 4 sessions because I know that it's too much information and people will be in overwhelm and just get frustrated trying to consume it all and apply it if I made it 1 session. But that's one of the things that we're going to actually work through when it comes to the resume. But what candidates need to remember, especially in a down economy, is you get 1 time to make a great first impression, whether it's an applicant tracking system or an in-person interview. So when you look at a job posting, again, you want to eliminate all of the fluff, drill down to what are the responsibilities of this role, what are the skills required. And then when you compare that posting to your resume, if they say, I'm looking for someone who can analyze information and you haven't depicted that on your resume, you need to. If they're looking for someone with project management expertise and you haven't put that on your resume and you have it, well, you need to. So ultimately what you're thinking about is alignment and compatibility as it relates to the job that you want in your resume.
Gotcha. So those that are listening should really be analyzing the job descriptions for key skills, key words, and making sure that those words themselves are actually incorporated into their resume so that there's a match, right? So
absolutely.
And then the resume line up. So it's actually a benefit to use the words from the job description. Is that right?
That's right. And it's not a simple copy and paste because, again, you're telling your story and everybody's experience and expertise is different. But think of this way. Let's say you're dating someone and you tell this wonderful individual that you love steak. And for whatever reason, whenever he's talking about taking you out to eat, he's like, well, we're going to go and get some turkey sandwiches. At some point, look at your face.
No.
Yeah. You'll be like, what? So you can't do that with, of course, your resume, right? If they're looking for X and you're giving them A through L, why would they hire you?
Makes perfect sense. Need to make it, I think one of the things I'm hearing as a consistent theme is we need to make it easy on the person to make a decision in our favor. We want to make it, we
Absolutely.
don't want it, we don't want them to have to weed through a whole lot of information. We want to make sure that the things that they're looking for, we're showcasing in the resume. Those things are going to be really, really important to help us stand out, because everybody's not going to do the things that we're talking about tonight. So you actually position yourself to stand out in a positive way when you take a hold of these tips. Awesome.
Absolutely.
Awesome. So now we did have someone who was really excited about our conversation today, and they submitted a question in advance.
Okay.
So she wanted to know about this USA job. So it's my understanding that this is for a person that's looking to get a government job. Talk to us about, is there anything unique about that process that an applicant would need to consider to position themselves there?
Well, funny thing is, most of my clients don't have government jobs, but based on the research that I've conducted, number one, there are over 400 jobs out there on the site that the government is hiring for. So that's one of the things that people may want to consider if they haven't. And it's not necessarily, well, I haven't worked for the government before. Go out there, because they have paths. So if you're a veteran, these are some of the roles that might interest you. If you have this level of experience, this is the role, or these are the roles that may interest you. So first and foremost, there are at least 400 jobs out there on the government site, the USA, I wrote it down, jobs.gov site. Second thing is, for those jobs, you can expand a little more in your resume than you can in our sector, for example. So I've read that your resume can be up to 5 pages, just depending on the role that you're applying for within the government. So the big difference between that 1 to 2 page conversation that we were having and when you're applying for a government job, you have an opportunity to expand on your studies even more. But there's also some tips out there on another website called gogovernment.org. They even have pro tips for your resume if you're applying for a government job. And a lot of what they shared is exactly what I've shared today, which is you need to target your resume to the posting that you're applying for. Of course, it needs to be professional in appearance, but it definitely needs to align with the role that you seek.
Gotcha. So it's really the same fundamentals, right? No matter whether you're applying for a government job or you're applying for a job in banking, it's the same fundamentals. Make it easy for yourself to stand out in a positive way by matching everything up, making it clear and concise. So thank you for helping us to demystify some of the things around resumes. Now let's talk about something that you're passionate about: interviewing.
I knew it was coming.
Let's talk about interviewing. You know, I think before we talk about some of the techniques and strategies for interviewing, you know, I know that I've personally had this experience. So there were times in my career where I felt like I had it all together. You know, I had the education, I had the experience, I had the credentials, but getting an interview was a challenge. So, you know, I'm sure that many of the people out there have experienced this. You're applying, and you get this kind of cold letter: thank you for applying, we've decided to go in a different direction, or it may be phrased different ways. And then sometimes you don't hear at all. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on, first, before we talk about strategy, if I'm applying and I'm not getting an interview, what could be going wrong, and what are some things that I should start to look at?
More than likely, it's the resume. Because that has to be done well before you can get the interview. So the tips that we've already shared around, you know, the alignment and the presentation, and it's the language. The thing about the hiring process is you are required to use a language that most of us don't use on a day-to-day basis. And it's like everything else. The more you do it, the better you get. The beauty of resumes is that you can have somebody do your resume for you. Now with the interview, nobody can go to the interview for you. So you have to learn how to, and I call it, speak the language of skills. But then there are those times where there are just so many people applying for roles. You may not be doing anything wrong. It just may be that they've had the number of applicants that they need to have in order for them to say, okay, we have enough candidates that at least one of these should be willing to accept an offer from us. and we need to move on to the next requisition. So just having someone look over your resume who has expertise in it, whether that's a recruiter, hiring manager, paying someone else to do it, leveraging the local libraries when we could, go into the job help center, doing those kinds of things just to get another set of eyes on your resume. The mistake that people make though, Tam, is they will ask somebody, can you review my resume? I wrote an article several years ago titled Why I Will Not Review Your Resume. And well, I knew one, the title would catch people, but the point of the whole article was if you're going to ask someone to review your resume, give them a posting to go along with it. How can I or anyone else honestly tell you whether or not your resume aligns with the role that you want if I don't know what the role looks like? I can tell you if it contains errors. I can tell you if it flows. I can look at a resume within a matter of seconds and tell you whether or not you're selling yourself short just because I've done it so long. But for the person who can't do that and they look at your resume and go, oh, it looks good. And then you're like, well, how come I get an interview? Just make sure that if there's a role that you're interested in or a role that you've even applied for, that you give someone something to compare your resume to.
Yeah. That's a great point that I just want to reiterate, because what it means is that a resume is not a standalone document. It's not just something that I want to make look really good and make sure there are no grammatical errors and it looks pretty. It is we need to think about it as a complement to the job that I am posting for. So they really shouldn't be two separate things. They should work together. So I think that's a big takeaway for our audiences. Don't just focus on how can I position myself and make myself sound good on the resume, but how can I make sure that this resume aligns with the job that I am applying for and speaks to the point that you made earlier, speaks the language of that job, right? Because every company has a different culture. They have different things that they're looking for. And, our audience needs to I didn't plan to talk about this, but it's just a thought is, hey, we need to go research the company that you want to go work at, right? And understand what's important to them, what some of their values are. And that would help not only from the standpoint of the resume, but also the interview, right? To help prepare for that interview.
Oh my gosh, yes. So research is huge whenever you are looking to land a job, right? That's down economy, any economy. People do business with people they like, people hire people they like. So in one of my courses, one of the things that I ask attendees of this course is, how will you connect with the interviewer? How are you going to connect with the hiring manager? They've already seen your resume. What is it about you that's going to stand out so much that they will be doing themselves a disservice if they don't hire you? Maybe it's the alignment with the mission and vision. Maybe it's something that you share about yourself when you answer the tell me about yourself question that people read that is memorable and that resonates with them. Maybe it's when you ask questions at some point during the interview, you've asked strategic questions that will allow you to build upon the answer that is shared and you build rapport with someone to the degree where they're like, yeah, we know that this person can do the job, but we also know that they'll be a great fit for the team and a win for the organization.
So, what I'm hearing from you is there's a great deal of preparation that needs to occur in order to be successful in interviewing. So it's almost like it's a little bit of a part-time job to get a job, right? Because you need to research to make sure that you understand the company, their mission, their values. You need to incorporate that into your resume. And then you need to actually think about, what am I going to contribute to the interview process? So it's not just about showing up for the interview and answering the questions that the hiring manager has, but how am I going to distinguish myself in how I even show up to the interview?
That's right.
Fair in order to do that, right?
That's right.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit more about the interview process. So now some people have had the experience where they haven't gotten a call, but other people have gone on interviews and it didn't pan out. I know I've been in that situation before. You may go on interview after interview after interview. What are your thoughts of some things that a person should reflect on when they're in a situation where there have been a number of interviews that just haven't panned out?
One thing that I recommend that, first of all, everyone has is a level of support, right? So someone that you can talk to about your experience, someone who can encourage you, someone who can hold you accountable. But when you are done with an interview, I was going to say when you leave an interview, most of them are in person nowadays. So you won't be leaving, you'll be like remote. But
Right.
after that conversation concludes, is really do a debrief. Think about what you did well. Think about some of the things that may have happened during the conversation where you felt they were affirming, maybe a great answer that you had. It's hard for people to determine what they're doing wrong because they can't see their blind spots. So if you go from interview to interview to interview and you're still not getting the job, more than likely it is something that you are not saying. And what I found to be true year after year after year that I've done this work is the language is too vague. It is not specific enough. People are not exactly sure what an effective response entails. And then there are just those times with those star responses where you've stated a situation task. By the time you got to the result, you haven't fully answered the question.
Mm. So going back to that thought around preparation, should we be, this is what I'm thinking, should we be thinking about what are the questions that I'm most likely to get asked and actually thinking through what our responses should be before we get to the interview versus just kind of going in and let's see what they ask me? Should there be some preparation around, hey, what should I expect to get asked in this interview process?
Whatever you do, do not wing it. That's a part of your preparation. When you dissect that posting, like I was talking about earlier with the resume, where you've eliminated the fluff and you've said, these are the responsibilities, these are the skills that are required. Your next step as you prepare is when you've identified those skills, you now need to think of examples that demonstrate skill proficiency. Not just any example, but the best example that you can think of. And you do that for every skill that's listed. So now when they pose the question, and you can Google practice questions. It's not an open book test, probably never will be. I know there are some instances for internal candidates where someone has slipped you a copy of the interview guide. But for a lot of people, especially in the down economy, when you are external to the organization, you don't have any idea what questions they're going to answer. I'm sorry, what questions they're going to ask. No, you will need to answer the questions in a way that show that you can do the job. They're going to want to know that you have the skills to perform. So you can Google questions, right? Going with the analyze information example. If it says that they're looking for someone to analyze information, go to Google, type in analytical behavioral-based interview questions. You'll get a gazillion of them. So for every skill, type in that skill followed by behavioral-based interview questions. Find yourself some practice questions. And then take the answers out of your head. It can be a note in your phone. You could do a voice note. You can record yourself with video. It can be a spreadsheet. Whatever your method is, find what works for you, just so that you can make sure that by the time you get to that interview, when they pose a question, you're listening for the skill. What skill are they asking me to demonstrate in this question? But also don't be afraid to take notes. So you can take notes while you're in an interview just to make sure that you have clarity and you know where your story ends before you start speaking.
I love that. I love that. So first, part of your preparation is to look for a specific type of interview questions. So we're looking for behavioral questions because that's going to allow us to prepare in a way that talks about our experience and how we have demonstrated some of the things we talked about in our resume, right? Because it's not enough to say I have these skills. The person that's looking to hire wants to be able to hear and how you answer the question that you have proficiency in that area. So that's perfect. That's good to know. That's good to know.
Yes. I'm sorry, there was a motorcycle riding by and I'm like, really?
Yay, listen, we're going to work it out. We're going to work it out. So let's talk about the situation where there may be somebody out here that has an interview, coming tomorrow or early next week, and they're here because they want to get some quick tips on what they can do to prepare for the interview. So we've already talked about doing the research on the behavioral-based questions. researching the company, understanding their mission and values. Is there anything else that you would recommend that someone who's looking to get interviewed in the next couple of days do to prepare for that process?
Absolutely. And it's not safe to assume that every employer uses behavior-based interviewing. So it's okay to ask because you don't want to use the wrong type of preparation, right? So it's okay to ask the recruiter who contacts you, does this employer, and you can say the employer's name, of course, if you know it, will they be using behavioral-based interviews? And they should be able to let you know whether or not you will be using or required to use star responses. For that person who has an interview within the next couple of days, I tell people never go to an interview empty-handed. And even virtual, that rule still applies, because you can create a portfolio, save it as a PDF, send it to the recruiter, and ask that they distribute it to every person who's on the panel, if there is a panel, but definitely to make sure that the hiring manager gets it. So what that portfolio looks like is, and I know people don't like to talk about cover letters anymore. They say recruiters don't read them. They say hiring managers do.
They do still use cover letters. Okay, that's good to
Some
know.
people still do, right? A lot of people don't. Some people still do. But what you don't want to do is assume that they don't and miss your opportunity to make a great impression because you decided not to do it.
That's real.
So, cover letter followed by your resume. You should be able, your network should be so strong that at any point in time, you should, one, be able to give people your resume, two, be able to have someone give you a letter of recommendation. And I'm not talking about a personal letter of recommendation. I'm talking about someone that you've worked with who can vouch for you, that may not be your leader and probably shouldn't be your leader. Depending on the relationship you have with them, they may not even know, that this is someone who's looking or someone that I want to recommend, right? But if you have built relationships along the way in your career and relationships external to the organization through volunteerism, maybe board seats that you've held, someone should be able to vouch for what it is you do, right? So the fact that you have letter recommendation in there, if you have received an award or you've been recognized for work that's relevant to the role you're applying for, put a copy of it in there. Then have a page that lists 3 professional references. In other words, when it's time for them to make a decision, a hiring decision, they don't need to go anywhere. They have all of your information. You also want to have a 30, 60, 90-day strategy. I include a template of that in my course, 20 Things to Consider Before Every Interview. Something that will wow hiring managers time and time again is the fact that you have thought strategically about how you will make an impact within the first 90 days of being hired. So what that looks like is you've said, in 30 days, I will do this, this, this. In 60 days, I will do this, this, this. In 90 days, I will do this, this, this. Oh, someone is posing a question. When do you give them the packet with all of this info? They should have that before your interview, Terry. So what you would do is add all of it, make it one document with several pages, save it as a PDF, and send it over to the recruiter and ask that every person on the panel get a copy of it. You definitely want to make sure the hiring manager has a copy of it. You're welcome, Terry.
Yes, that's awesome. And I'm glad you see that. For some reason, I'm not seeing the chat questions. So I'm glad that they're coming up for you. So let me know if we get any others. But Erica, I am blown away by that because now you have immediately distinguished yourself. I can tell you I've interviewed probably hundreds of people and I've never received anything like that before. So that in and of itself would distinguish the candidate that they've thought through putting all of those pieces in there. I love what you said about having a professional reference. And I want to expand on that a little bit because what you're really teaching us tonight is the importance, the value of relationships, right? So you're not, it's going to be really hard to get your next job if you don't have the relationships that have been nurtured to the point that someone is willing to speak favorably on your behalf. So I know, again, transparently, there have been times in my corporate career where I thought all I needed to do was come in, do a good job, focus on my stuff, and I'm out, right? But that doesn't work when you're looking to level up, because you need people that can speak positively on your behalf. So it's not just enough, would you agree, Erica, to do the job well? Part of your job, if you want to manage your career in a way that allows you to increase your income, is to build relationships. Would you agree?
Oh my God. So that's one of the five things, right? We haven't gotten to that part of the conversation yet, but at every stage of your career, you you have to make it a non-negotiable that you establish and sustain relationships. I hear time and time again people say, well, I don't have time to network. I don't have time to build relationships. Yeah, you do. You do. We all have the same 24 hours in a day. The question is, has it been prioritized? The question is, have you made it manageable in such a way that it's not as difficult as you may think it needs to be? You can literally build relationships once a quarter. You can literally build relationships once a quarter with 2 or 3 people a quarter, just depending on the nature of the relationship and what the frequency is that you will need to be in contact with them. It doesn't have to take a lot of time, but there are some doors that will only open from the inside. I don't care who you are, employee or employer, you will always need people. I don't care how great Erica thinks she is, other people think Erica is. Erica needs relationships in order for her to do anything. I had an interview yesterday with Black Enterprise. There were over 20 coaches at this year's Black Enterprise Women of Power Summit. Relationships. It doesn't necessarily mean that I'm the best coach out there. The relationships that have been cultivated over the last couple of years are still showing up for me. Oh, national stages. Yeah. I can't tell you how my name gets into some of these rooms. What I can tell you is that I'm nice to everybody that I meet, that I'm polite, that I try to help as many people as I can. And it's not always about, oh, well, I have to secure them as a client. Sometimes it takes a matter of minutes to answer a question for somebody and send them on their way. And that's all the help that they need. There shouldn't always be a cost associated with that, but that is the equity that you put into people. And at some point, that stuff is going to come back to you. So you have to manage your relationships. You have to manage your reputation. At every level of your career, you need a mentor, you need a coach, you need a sponsor.
Oh, every level. About that, because I know the difference between those, but I want to make sure that our audience understands the difference, because they play very different roles. Can you break down for us, how do you distinguish mentor, coach versus sponsor?
Sure. So a mentor is someone who, of course, is going to give you guidance. I look at the mentor as someone who I just got another chat. You still can't see the chats? I have to go through all of these at some point.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on with my chat. I can't see it.
Okay.
But you got it. We're going to work it out.
Okay. So when it comes to mentoring, the person who mentors you is usually someone that you have identified who's had success in an area where you have not yet succeeded. That's someone you're looking to guide you, right? If you look at a sponsor, look at the two this way. A mentor will speak to you, a sponsor will speak for you. So that sponsor is someone who has a level of influence and maybe even some decision-making power that maybe the mentor does not have, right? And of course, with the coach, we go to a coach, and I know I've paid for coaching. I know you've paid for coaching. Every coach has a coach, right?
Yes.
Coach has coach. But for that coach, that is the person who is identifying your blind spots. And usually it's someone who has a level of expertise in an area that you are specifically looking to grow in. So they're definitely developing you in a way that a mentor can't and a sponsor can't. So if you look at it again as a mentor is someone who's giving you some guidance, some advice. That coach is someone who's developing you, who's helping you take a particular skill set to the next level. Or in my case, what I do with my clients is offer strategy, ongoing support and advice. And yes, there is a level of interview coaching as well, because my clients are looking to advance their career. These are powerful women who are killing the game at work. Those are who my clients are. And then, of course, yeah, that's who they are. And then, of course, the sponsor is someone who will speak for you. That's that person who is basically like, oh my God, do you know Tam? I work with Tam at such and such. She does this, 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 this. You need to consider her for this role. All of a sudden, you've been getting rejection emails now, and you get tapped on the shoulder. Hey, Tam, we need to talk to you in conference room A for 30 minutes. And that's where you want to be.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Agree 100%. And I think I'm glad that we talked about this because I think it's easy to think that it's just about job performance. And that was one of the ahas that I had to have as to why, as at the time that I was really looking to move up corporate and why it wasn't happening is I had not built the relationships that I needed to build in order to open the doors that I wanted to have open. So you may not hear this talked about in a lot of circles, but know that a lot of times someone has already risen to the top of the list, right? Because they have the network, they have the relationships, right? And so instead of, my view is instead of that's not fair, is figure out how you can be that person, how you can be the person that people are speaking up for so that you are the person that has the unfair advantage, right? You can be that person too. It's not something that's limited to a select group of people. If you apply the things that Erica is sharing with us tonight, then you can be that person. You can be that person. So let's talk about this because you mentioned earlier something that I wholeheartedly believe that you only get one chance to make a good first impression. So I'd love to kind of look at both sides of the coin here. What is something that a person can do in an interview that you're immediately like, okay, like, like, it's, you can say some stuff, but you were probably done. And then on the other hand, what is some, thinking about an experience where someone has really impressed you and really started off with a really positive impression, just to give our audience some examples of what that could look like.
So one of the things when I used to sit on the opposite side of the table as the hiring manager that rubbed me the wrong way every single time, didn't matter who it was, how much experience they had, was if they did not prepare. And by that, I mean, they came in with a level of ego and arrogance and felt that if they were charismatic enough, that would sway me and or the panel to the degree that they would get the job. I felt that it was insulting. But I also asked follow-up questions just to give this person the opportunity to answer questions to confirm for me whether or not this person would be ideal for the role. So if you have ever gone to an interview and you're like, okay, I'm not as prepared as I should be, whatever you do, have a level of integrity and do your best to answer the questions the best way you can, simply because I love to interview. I interview well, but I recognized a long time ago that that's not everybody's testimony. So I've literally sat across from people who have, you could visibly see the sweat under a man's arms in his dress shirt because he was that nervous. But that didn't disqualify him from the role because he sat there and he answered the questions to the best of his ability and he ended up getting a job offer. So it isn't even about, okay, this person came in and they were nervous. Were you prepared, or was it just that you are someone who feels anxiety in an interview? And hiring managers who have a level of skill in this area can tell the difference. Now, for the people who impress me, I'm always prepared by someone who is, impressed by someone who's prepared and professional in appearance. There have been times when people show up and they're not professional in appearance and they interview well. I now challenge people, especially my friends who have the ability to hire. If that person was great in the interview, offer them the job. Just make sure you have the conversation with them around appearance guidelines, because the reality is in my community where I'm from, there is no distinction between dressed up, as in I'm going to the club dressed up, and professionalism. When you know better, you do better. So if all we do is say, well, we're not going to give Stacy the job because she came in here and her V was way too low. Stacy may not know any better, but if Stacy nailed it during the interview, have a conversation with Stacy about professional appearance guidelines, making sure that she understands that if she doesn't adhere to them, that we will release her into her destiny, but at least give her the opportunity.
Into her
to
desk.
do better into her
Bless
destiny.
her heart.
Yes, bless her heart. What I will also say is one of the things that really made a great impression on me is the person who could connect with who I am as a candidate, why I want this job, and also what the organization offers in terms of vision, values, strategy. So, an example of that would be when I applied for my job with CPCC. I was a college and career adjunct professor for 2 years. And I never saw myself as a teacher. I decided to be a teacher because, as a part of my legacy, I want an interviewing skills course in every high school across the country. And I recognize that there are some things that I need to learn on the inside of the education realm and academia in order for me to make that happen. So for me, being an adjunct professor meant that I get to learn about curriculum. I get to learn about policy. I also get to teach. I also get to make an impact in my community. But the way that I was able to connect in the interview beyond my experience, why are you interested in this role? Because there are some aspects of career that we need to secure and sustain employment that isn't taught. And I would like to be a part of that change as well as a part of this team.
Absolutely. Wow. Wow. Man, these nuggets are priceless. And I see, Terry, I got my chat working now. We do have to be open to feedback, and that's so critically important. One of the things that I have talked with people about when they hadn't gotten a role, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, is following up to find out why. Like
Yeah.
going back and asking, I was surprised at how many people didn't get the job. And when I would ask the question, did you follow up to see, if they had any tips for you or any advice? In most instances, people said no. I'd love to hear your perspective. Why would it be important to circle back when you don't get the job?
Feedback is a gift. You need feedback, whether it is relative to an interview or feedback relevant to your performance, feedback relevant to your reputation. What I will tell you is this is a pain point for so many people because if you are external to an organization and we're talking about this down economy and you're not getting a job, recruiters don't have the time to give you feedback from the hiring manager. And if it's the hiring manager who's making the decision, who's saying we're not going to go with this person, the hiring manager doesn't have the capacity. If you are an internal candidate, though, yes, you should always ask for feedback. What I've also found to be true with some of my peers that used to hire with me is they were not confident or comfortable enough to give feedback because of the risk associated with it. If I say the wrong thing, is this now a liability for the organization? So if you haven't had a level of training that will allow you to give concise feedback in a way that will help the candidate build from there, people are frustrated and people get burned out applying, finally get to an interview. Now I'm not getting the job. Now I want feedback and no one's giving it to me.
Mm.
So yes, you should ask for it, but A, it doesn't mean you're going to get it. B, in those instances where you can't get it, I recognize that not everybody can afford to pay for a coach, but this is where your relationships are so important. Find you somebody.
Somebody, girl.
And let me add to the end of that can coach you on your interview. Make sure I.
Anybody. Someone who is skilled. Someone who is skilled.
Yeah.
Yeah, you need that feedback. And that's another great point. And we have some questions. So ladies, I see your questions. We're going to get to it. Yes, the session is being recorded. And Pam and Deidre, we're going to get to your question in just a second. But you're right. The environment is such now that you really have to own your development, whether it is a career or you're an entrepreneur, right? It didn't stop for us when we decided that we wanted to start our own business. You have to find someone that has the skills that you're looking to obtain. And sometimes that means you're going to have to invest your time, your energy, and your money. The company is not obligated. They are not obligated to invest in your growth and development. If you want your career to level up, then you need to be willing to invest. So let's see. Pam has a question. How do you regroup in the job search process after a termination? How detailed should my explanation about the experience be on the application?
Well, and that's a tough question, right? So if it is a termination, not a displacement, because the two are very different, right? Displacements a lot of times are the company's downsizing, they no longer need your role. Termination could be something that may or may not be your fault, right? Um, just depending on how the policy is read, how the hiring manager and HR will interpret it. I would not go into detail on the application stage of why I was terminated. That is the one place you want to be vague, not dishonest. But
But
I say that because if it's something that you need to speak to and give background to, you may not have the space to do that as a part of the application. And then you want to be your best voice and best advocate in this process. So let's say, for example, I was terminated for a policy violation, right? um, in the application process, where it gives me the opportunity to say, were you terminated, yes or no, or reason for leaving. In the past, I've seen candidates put will discuss. That did not rule them out to get an interview.
hmm.
It made me curious because when we got there, I want to have a conversation about it.
What we discussing? Because now curiosity is peaked now, right?
Yeah, tell me what happened.
It wasn't dishonest. They didn't say no because you definitely
Right,
want to say
right. But also, right, when things like that happen, and as hard as it can be, because we play stories out over and over and over again in our mind, I am never going to tell someone to lie about any part of the process, because if you decide to do that, once an employer finds out about it, they may terminate you anyway, right? So if you place the words "will discuss," and you come into the interview, be really clear about what you're willing to talk about, what you're not willing to talk about, because nobody can make you answer questions that you don't want to answer or give information that you don't want to give. You really need to be clear about, this is why I was terminated. If it's something that you actually did, is this the time that you want to talk about the lessons learned and tell your story about how it happened? I've seen people who were terminated because they were an accomplice, and because the way the policy was written, they both got terminated, but the other person wasn't necessarily guilty, if you know what I mean. For Pam, if you want to reach out to me directly so we can talk a little bit more about this, we can definitely do that. But what I will say is, go through the process with integrity and just be very careful about what you put in that space if you can fill it out on the application, because you don't want to get yourself tossed into a pile because you said the wrong thing too soon.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. That's good. Deidre says, when is the best time to request feedback during the interview? Is it appropriate to request feedback during the actual interview? Love your.
It is, my thought is to pose the question, is there anything that I've shared today that would make you feel like I am not the best candidate for this role?
Wow. And let's see what they say, right?
And then bat your eyes twice and smile. Wait for it. Because here's the thing, I don't know how you would say, give me feedback right now, in the most professional way that wouldn't discount you as a candidate without being strategic. If there's something that they need clarification on, if they said, well, we were looking for someone who had a little bit more expertise in said space. Now you have the opportunity right there to overcome their objection. If you've prepared properly and dissected that job posting, you already know this is what they're looking for. This is where I fall short. You should have thought about what you were going to say should that deficiency come up. So now in the interview, when they say we were looking for someone with a little more expertise in this space, you already say, or you already know, I've already done this to improve in that space. Or when I think about my collective experience, I am able to do this, what I've researched about this area of the business, and what this job posting says, this is what will be required. Is there anything else that maybe I'm not aware of that will be required as it relates to this?
Love that. I see some. That's good. Love that. Awesome, awesome. You guys are getting some great nuggets, and I know we're getting close on time. So I want to do a couple of things because you shared that you are inviting our guest tonight to follow up with you directly. So why don't you share with the audience, how can they follow you on social media? What platforms are you on, and how can they find you there?
Okay. Social media platforms. So LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, Confident Career Woman, Twitter, Erica_Spradley. My website is ericaspradley.com. And if you decide to enroll in some of my online courses, some of them do have a cost associated with them. Some of them are free. That's at www.confidentcareerwoman.com. I know Pam specifically is going to follow up with me. So Pam, and for anyone else who needs it, my email address is info@ericaspradley.com. That's Erica, ERICKA. Spradley is SPRAD as in David, LEY.com.
All right. So we're putting the email address, and I'm also, ladies and gentlemen, I'm putting the link to Erica's Career Catalyst program that she's offering absolutely free to help continue what we have started tonight. That is also in the chat. We will also be sending the replay and all of this great information along with some additional tools and resources. But I'd love for you, Erica, if you could, thinking about everything that we talked about tonight, if we were to synthesize this into 5 key things that you would want everyone to take away, what would those things be? What do we need to take away from tonight's conversation?
Okay. The first thing, here's what I want you to think about. When you think of 5 things to land in your job, think about Oscar. So, I want you to identify your options. A lot of times people find themselves exactly where I was, as I mentioned earlier, in my 30s. I want something different. I don't know what. In this case, because we've never seen anything like this before, people are basically like, well, who's hiring? What we thought we would transition to January 1st, 2020, as it related to career advancement. Right now, your interim role may not be your ideal, but that doesn't mean that you can't seize the opportunity and then pick up several months from now or next year and journey back to the path that you had in mind. So when I say identify your options, you can Google companies hiring during COVID-19, companies hiring during the coronavirus, employers seeking remote help or persons to work from home. When you identify your options, please be clear on what your transferable skills are. Most people have not taken the time to identify them. Most people don't even know where to find a list. Google it. Google transferable skill listing. One of the things that, of course, I'll share with people as they go through my Career Catalyst program that starts on Sunday is a transferable skill listing. But when you think of Oscar, 5 things you can do, options, identify your options. Having those transferable skills will definitely expand your options. It's how someone who went from retail to banking as a branch manager, having never worked in the industry, did not have a college degree, did it, then transitioned into a totally different industry. Education, my degree is not in education. I'd never formally taught. Trust me, you can do it. If I've done it, I know that you can do it. The S, social media. Get active on LinkedIn. Active doesn't mean every day. You get to decide what active means to you. But if you are looking to land something, you need to be on LinkedIn. Your profile needs to be optimized. And we'll talk a little bit about that in my Career Catalyst program as well. But you definitely need to be leveraging social media. So the S is for social media. The C is for consider your cover letter. You may not need a cover letter every time, but in those options where it says upload a cover letter and it says optional, I always tell people in my workshops, do it. The reason I say do it is because I mentioned earlier, some hiring managers read them, even though recruiters don't. Who makes the decision? The hiring manager. From an applicant tracking system perspective, depending on what words are in that cover letter, guess who's coming up with a match? because you uploaded your cover letter and your resume, right? So consider your cover letter. Don't rule it out. Something else along the same vein is when I was a hiring manager and it said optional, that person who took the time to send in a cover letter, that's the person in my mind who's going to do a little bit more than what's required because it said optional. So it's speaking for you when you don't get the opportunity to speak for yourself yet.
Love it.
Ace the interview. Employers are not looking to hire average talent. You cannot afford to show up with average interview skills and take that chance. Again, you get one opportunity. And then the R, rely on your relationships. Always, always, always have a social capital strategy. If you don't have one, it's not too late. We won't cry over spilled milk, but consider, who are the people that I need around me to build my success team? A lot of times it's not the people that you're the most familiar with. Don't be afraid to reach out to somebody on LinkedIn. Most of the people I'm connected to on LinkedIn, I don't know.
That's the beauty of social media, right? Is you can be connected with anyone, anywhere, right?
Man, let me tell you something before this ends, because I could talk about this stuff all day, right? I heard someone say this and
now, that's right.
We all one big family.
I know that's right.
I heard someone say in one of my workshops last year, never be your first no. Don't ever be the first person to tell you no. Don't let that be you. When I was looking to see who were the nation's leading career coaches, I went to Google and I'm like, nation's leading career coaches. And my name was not on page one. I'm like, Google is tripping. I can't believe I'm not on page one in search results. And rightfully so. I hadn't done the work. There wasn't a lot of content out there for me, but I was just curious to see who my competition was, who I might need to learn from. And this lady came up, Maggie Mistel, and it said nation's leading career coach. And I'm like, I've never heard of Maggie. So who is Maggie? So I did some additional research. I reached out to Maggie, introduced myself, and asked Maggie if she would mentor me for 15 minutes a month. Maggie's email that I sent to her didn't even contain 5 sentences. It doesn't need to. I introduced myself. I said what I needed to say. I put in the request. I thanked Maggie and told her I looked forward to hearing from her. Maggie responded to me and said, recently I've been thinking about ways to give back and who I could help. I would love to virtually mentor you for 15 minutes a month. One of the first interviews I had with someone interviewing me was Maggie Mistel. When I Google myself, and I Google myself often, I'm still coming up on Google from a podcast interview with Maggie Mistel several years ago when I was under the My Next Level umbrella. Wow. So the relationships, I promise you, Confident Career Woman, Erica Spradley, even my clients, there are people who reach out to me for coaching who are like, I'm not going to say any names because some of the people on this call, such and such sent me. And I'm like, Lord have mercy, what a blessing. But that's the relationship that I built with my client. And they feel like, okay, I trust Erica with my
I did it.
Thank you, girl. And all the rest of you who are on the call that I recognize who've done it too. But, to that point, right, it's relationships. What if I was arrogant to them? What if I was rude to them? I have a client right now that I said, she said, well, I can't afford coaching. I said, well, let's do a payment arrangement.
That's the heart right there. Let's work it out.
I would want somebody to do it for me. Especially now, especially in this time that we're in right now. So yeah, rely on your relationships and treat people kind. Someone sent me a chat that said to speak a little bit more about that, about being nice to people. One thing, you don't have to like people to learn from them. People will show you what to do as well as what not to do, but it doesn't cost you anything to be kind. It doesn't cost you anything to be nice. And don't equate, when you think about your relationships, title with influence. It's not always true. There are people on all levels of the organization, just because they're in a title today doesn't mean that that's the title that they've always had. Doesn't mean that their relationships are not strong. Doesn't mean that even when you go to my workshops, I tell people, the person you're sitting next to, talk to them, get to know them. You can ask me questions. I'm going to be here until they kick me out. But the person who's next to you could be the person who opens the next door for you. My name is Erica Spradley, and I approve this message.
Ah! Mic drop. Wow. Let's see. Ooh, good question. One more question, I think. Erica, can we tackle one more before we tell everyone good night?
We can tackle as many as you need to. My chat says 19. I don't know what yours says. So
let's see. How can you be kind without it being seen as a weakness?
So let me tell you, I was going to say I'm one of the nicest people I know.
Girl, I'm nice.
Just so everybody knows, I'm nice. But when you posed that question, I automatically thought about myself. You can't always control people's perception of you. What you control is your effort and what you think about you. And if you need to manage a conversation on the back end, don't be afraid to do that. There have been times, I'm an introvert. I can be at someone's party and sit in the corner and people will be like, are you having a good time? And I'm like, yes. And they're like, are you sure? And I'm like, the first answer was sufficient. Yes, I am. But that's because what they're seeing and what they define as having a good time, there's a disconnect. So you have to be very careful with being nice to people, but also having a standard about yourself that says, while I'm nice, I do have boundaries, and there are some things that are permissible and some things that are not permissible. This is my tone of voice. This is the same tone of voice that says, yes, I'll be more than happy to help you. And the same tone of voice that says, this is your last day with the company. My tone of voice usually doesn't change, but I'm still a nice person. I still care about people. I still have compassion for people. So you can be kind and not have to wear the weight of it being a weakness. Just don't have the self-talk that says, when I'm nice to people, they're going to take advantage of me. No, be nice to people and make sure that they don't take advantage of you.
Yeah. The boundaries is definitely an important topic, right? We've got to set the boundaries. We teach people how to treat us, right?
Yes.
So we set that standard. I've got a question in the Q&A, and it is, sending thank you notes to the hiring manager, is that something obsolete or still relevant today? I know you got a passionate answer about that one. Talk to me.
I gave somebody a thank you card yesterday. Believe it. In person. Now, of course, it wasn't job related, but I promise you, I have thank you notes. I go to the Dollar Tree. I know we can't do that now, but I will buy like 5 packs of thank you notes, and not the ones that, have all these long words in them, because I want to personalize them. They never go out of style. I know that because we have email, you definitely want to send a thank you note because that will get there faster. But if there is a way that you can also send a card, they go a long way. And because a lot of people don't do them and feel like they're obsolete, guess who's standing out in the hiring manager's head?
Yep, standing out. Mm-hmm. Good question. Let's see. Let me see if there are any more before wait, one new message. Thank you. 2 snaps. Look at all the love that you're getting, Erica.
Thank y'all.
Oh my goodness. Well, thank you so much, everyone. Again, make sure that you check Erica out on social media. If you have specific questions, we have her email address in the chat, info@ericaspradley.com. We also have the link to her Career Catalyst program, which is going to be starting on this, what's the date? What's the official date? 19th?
Yep, Sunday the 19th, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Sunday the 19th at 6 p.m. So if this session has been beneficial to you and you want to learn more, make sure that you follow that link so that you can sign up for the program. There was no way that we could get everything included tonight, but thank you so much for being here, Erica, and sharing all of your wisdom and knowledge. Family, we'll be getting you the replay and the tools and the resources that we promised. Thank you so much for coming. Look at all of the love that we're getting. Good night, everyone. God bless.
Good night. Thank you all.
Bye.
Bye.